What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading, back at it again with another crypto market update. Today we've got Solana, Sui, and Aptos. I'm sure you're all wondering what's going on with these cryptos. How low are they going to go? When are they going to recover? How high could they go this year? If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of these crypto projects. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. With that being said, guys, I want to start by highlighting something again that a lot of people are missing, especially when the markets are going down. Something that no one is paying attention to is that there's been significant progress on stablecoin regulation in the last few weeks. So I guess over the last 2 or 3 weeks, let's say. It's something I mentioned in previous videos, but it's something that is worth repeating because everyone just seems to be ignoring it. The Senate Banking Committee recently passed the Genius Act. Of course, it still needs to be passed by the Senate as a whole, and then after that, it would need to go to the House. In the House, recently, the House Committee also passed their stablecoin regulation, which is also going to have to go for a full vote in the House, and then if it gets passed there, then it goes to the Senate. There's probably going to be a little bit of back and forth, but the point being is that progress is being made there, and potentially by the end of the month, I mean, I suspect it'll be probably closer to May, but between basically over the next few weeks, we should get finalized stablecoin regulations. Why am I mentioning this? Because, of course, Solana, Aptos, and Sui are three of the top chains for stablecoins. And in terms of growth of stablecoins, they've seen the most growth. And here, another thing worth flagging real quick is that in the shorter term, some of you guys may have heard that the SEC also clarified that most stablecoins are not securities, which is, of course, going to be helpful for stablecoin growth around the margins. But, of course, before we see significant stablecoin growth, we're going to need to see those regulations. And again, those are coming in the next couple of weeks here. And I do think that those are going to be the primary demand drivers for these layer one cryptos, specifically for Solana, for Sui, and Aptos, and, of course, also for Ethereum, which is the top chain for stablecoins above and beyond all three of these chains. And just to show you guys what I mean here, you might have noticed that the amount of stablecoins on Solana has been climbing quite significantly. It actually spiked around the time that Trump launched his meme coin back in January, and you can see that since that time, the stablecoin market cap has basically doubled. Now there's more than $12 billion worth of stablecoins, and this figure continues to climb. I mean, of course, the climb has been a little bit less extreme than it was before, but this figure continues to climb, and that does suggest that we're going to see basically some significant stablecoin stuff on in Solana's ecosystem, namely payments, a lot of stuff around DeFi. Of course, you could say that a lot of the stablecoin growth is people who are maybe just like rotating into stablecoins. That's also possible, of course. But in my view, the main thing to watch for, of course, is going to be DeFi and payments. And there's going to be a lot of stablecoin growth from that. And of course, Sol will benefit because Sol is needed to pay for the transaction fees associated with all of that stablecoin stuff, right? So that brings me to the stablecoin chart here, guys. To the Solana chart here, guys. One thing, I mean, you can just see, like, even without having to draw a trend line, but maybe I will just to make things a little bit clearer for you guys. You can see that quite clearly that Sol has a strong support line here, somewhere around $100. It fell briefly below that the other day, but it is holding that level so far. I do think that level is going to hold. I mean, it kind of has to hold. If it goes any lower than that, then yes, Sol could be entering kind of like a bear market again, let's say. But so long as Sol holds that level, I'm personally not too concerned. And again, we're on the monthly chart here, and it is worth reminding that temporary deviations below these key levels are normal as a result of liquidations and stuff like that. That's what makes trading so frustrating, especially in crypto, is that you'll see a price go below this key level that you were watching and you think it's over, but typically that's just because of a leverage long liquidation. It's not because of organic selling pressure, if that makes any sense. But anyways, guys, as you can see, I have the RSI indicator thrown on here. And one thing I really want to highlight here is that the RSI for Solana right now is at a level that was last seen when Sol was like $20, which is pretty crazy. And of course, as I was arguing in yesterday's video about Cardano, Chainlink, and Algorand, I do think that all these altcoins are going to get one more leg higher in the RSI between now and the end of the cycle. Of course, Sol had a pretty sizable leg higher here earlier in the, last year, went up all the way to 92. So maybe Sol Sol won't go all the way back up, into the 90 handle range, but even to rally, on the RSI terms, even to rally just from the current level, which is around 50, it's pretty oversold on the monthly, arguably, getting into that oversold territory. Even just to rally from that range would translate to a pretty sizable rally in dollar terms. And I do think that personally, Sol is a tricky one because I do think that some of the market share could be lost to like Sui and Aptos and these Solana competitors, the same way that Ethereum lost market share in the last cycle. Like if it wasn't for all those Ethereum killers, like Avalanche and Harmony and those guys, Ethereum probably would have hit around 10,000 in the previous cycle. But of course, it did get stopped out around I guess it was around 5,000 basically. So a lot of people I think are watching, including me. A lot of people are watching Solana and thinking, this is going to go to, let's say, $1,000. But I think it's possible that Sol will maybe top out at like 500, 550. It really depends. But I just keep thinking, reminding myself of how when I was analyzing Ethereum in the last cycle, I was convinced it was going to 1,000. It didn't get there. And in retrospect, I was like, oh, it's because there was so much, basically so much market share was taken by Ethereum competitors. And in this case, I think we're going to see the same thing happen with Sui and Aptos and other cryptos. So I do think that the cycle top for Sol could be closer to 550. But for the time being, I am, personally, I think it'll get closer to maybe like 900. It'll be either just below 1,000 or over 1,000, especially with the spot ETF and all this stuff. But I am kind of like cognizant that, let's say, on the lower range, as soon as we surpass 500 or $550 roughly in Sol, then anywhere between there and $1,000 would be probably a pretty comfortable level to take profits. And of course, Sol is now around 100, so you'd be looking at around a 5 to 10x potentially, which is not too shabby. And I do think that's a top that's going to be hit sometime over the summer, specifically probably sometime around August or September timeframe. But of course, we're gonna have to wait and see how the next few weeks play out. It's been pretty volatile, but honestly, this is not something that's completely unexpected. And I do think that we're going to close the month a little bit better than we are now, let's say around $120. So long as Sol closes this month somewhere around $120, I think is completely fine. That'll be a really nice 3 stars in the south pattern that will foreshadow a recovery in May. Anyways, guys, as you might have noticed, we were using Binance there. We have up to 20% trading fee discounts and up to $600 in bonuses. Those are the biggest deals and discounts you can get on Binance, available exclusively through the Coin Bureau. These deals are completely free, and to take advantage of them, all you have to do is click that link down in the description. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. You just enter your email or phone number, and you go through the sign up process. It takes like 2 minutes, and then you get those deals, up 20% trading fee discount, up to $600 in bonuses. Again, that's completely free. The exchange gets a new user, you get a trading fee discount, and we get a cut of your trading fees. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. So be sure to take advantage of that deal using the link in the description before it's gone. Anyways, guys, moving on now, I guess working on the same idea of the stablecoins. Look at what's been going on Sui. You can see that the stablecoin market cap has been exploding. I think it's increased, let's say, I don't know, by 30% or 40% over the last few weeks here, which is pretty impressive. Of course, most of that has come from USDC, and I think that the stablecoin market cap there would have been even higher were it not for all the FUD around FDUSD, which I'm not going to get into the details on, all the FUD that's going on there with like not being sufficiently backed or whatever and all this. It's just that who cares? Basically, point being, guys, is that this figure would be even higher were it not for some recent FUD around a different stablecoin. But regardless, I think the thing to watch here is that the USDC growth over the last month has been 51%, which is pretty crazy. And of course, USDC is kind of emerging as the top stablecoin in DeFi for payments, stuff like that, which of course that foreshadows a lot of, again, like payments and DeFi activity in Sui, either upcoming or already happening. But the point being, guys, that you can see that just Sui's support of stablecoins has been growing gradually. I guess not as exponential necessarily as Solana, but it is clearly catching up. And in terms of growth, specifically for USDC, Sui is one of the fastest growing chains for USDC growth. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, that brings me to the Sui chart here, and this is where things get very interesting. So in contrast to most altcoins, Sui already had a pretty sizable rally. Again, not looking so much at the price, but on the RSI, and of course we're on the monthly again. Sui already had a pretty sizable rally on the RSI all the way up to 90. So the chances that Sui would go even higher than that and like goes, I don't know, somewhere to the 90 handle range, higher than that, I think is a little bit doubtful. But again, from the current level, which is, entering almost oversold territory, the last time Sui was at this level on the RSI, it was down at around, 60 cents. So it was like 4x or yeah, it was around 4x lower than it is now. So the idea that SUI, even with the RSI growth, let's say, I don't know, back up to the 70 handle range, let's say, hypothetically, even the growth from that level, that would still translate to a pretty sizable rally. And I do think that SUI is going to be hitting at least $10 as a cycle top sometime over the summer. Any members of the Coin Bureau Club will know that my personal target for SUI for cycle top is somewhere closer to almost $20. The reason I believe SUI could get that big is not so much that not so much that it's like a top competitor to Solana, but more so that SUI falls into the GameFi narrative, which we haven't really seen take off yet. So if SUI is, let's say, I don't know, in a 1 or 2 months time, let's say SUI is somewhere back around $4, and the GameFi narrative still hasn't taken off yet, then logically that suggests that SUI could still go a lot higher from those levels because it would get caught up in that narrative, kind of like how we saw in the previous cycle with metaverse stuff, if you guys remember that. There was a lot of cryptos in the metaverse niche that had already rallied quite a bit, but the metaverse niche hadn't really like taken center stage. And once it did, those cryptos went up like another 10x on top of where they were, right? So I do think that of all these three cryptos, SUI has the highest potential to surprise to the upside. But in terms of the biggest gains, I do think that's going to come potentially from Aptos. So this again is another thing that a lot of people are, they're not paying attention to. They're just looking at Aptos's price and thinking it's over, it's over, it's over. The price just looks horrible, which it does, I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, it's worth pointing out, guys, that the amount of stablecoins on Aptos is actually more than on SUI. Like just let that sink in. So SUI, which is substantially larger than Aptos and has gotten a lot more traction, let's say, uh, it has a smaller stablecoin market cap than Aptos does. And you can see that in Aptos's case, the growth of USDC has been even bigger, around 86%. Of course, like rate of change, right? So it's, that's part of it. Most of the stablecoins on Aptos are USDT. But regardless, guys, you can see that the stablecoin growth here on Aptos has been just absolutely enormous from both from USDT and from USDC. That tells me again is that Aptos is either positioning for payments or DeFi or something along that line, or it's already kind of starting. But I do think, of course, the best is yet to come, let's say. So again, like all three of these charts, whether it's for Solana or SUI or Aptos, like all three of these stablecoin charts are telling me that things are looking more and more bullish beneath the surface, despite what the short-term price action has everyone feeling and believing, right? Eventually, these cryptos will recover and will rally to new highs. Where those highs are, that's up for debate. But again, I do think that these highs are going to be a lot higher than people expect, especially in the case of something like Aptos. So this brings me to the Aptos charts, guys. And as you can see, there isn't really like, too much to say here. I guess the only thing that's worth pointing out is that Aptos on the RSI has never gotten above an 80 handle, at least not yet. Maybe it did back, when it initially launched. It probably did, but of course the price history doesn't go back that far. And of course we're on the monthly again, in case you're wondering. Let's see, like to the untrained eye, like you look at the Aptos's price, you look at the RSI, and you think this thing just looks dead. It looks horrible. It looks like it's never going to grow. But again, it's crazy that consider that I think Aptos's market cap is something like 2.3 or 2.6 billion, and there's $1 billion of stablecoins on its chain. Like that should be a sign, right? It's like if the amount of stablecoins is like half the market cap, like I'm not saying it accounts for half the market cap, but if there's like, if you take the ratio, let's say, of the market cap for Solana or Ethereum relative to the amount of stablecoins on the chain, like in Aptos's case, it's just like it's massive, right? As a percentage of Aptos's market cap, which is, that's a little bit of a, let's say, a deviation that tells you that maybe Aptos is a little bit undervalued here at the very least. But anyways, guys, what's really interesting to me is, again, that the RSI has not been able to really break this 80 handle range, at least over the last couple of years. And what that suggests is that, again, like from this level, pretty oversold, let's say somewhere in the 40 range for the RSI, for it to go all the way into the 90 range, like you could see an explosive rally. And I do personally believe, guys, that Aptos is probably going to get, I would say at the very least, somewhere to around $50, because again, like from a 2.6 or 2.5 billion market cap to get up somewhere into the 30 billion market cap range for a crypto like Aptos, I think would be pretty reasonable, pretty normal. And I do think it could go even higher than that, somewhere up into the 90 or 100 billion, or sorry, into the 90 or $100 range. I do think that's, that $100 is something that a lot of people are going to be watching, which again, I guess you could tie it into what I was saying earlier about Ethereum, is that if most Aptos holders are watching $100 as the target, the same way that most Ethereum holders were watching 10,000 as the target in the previous cycle, then yeah, maybe Aptos will top out somewhere, I don't know, 50, 55, $60, really front running that as a result of competition from SUI, as a result lots of competition from other, even Base, right, which is another, it's a Ethereum layer 2 from Coinbase that has a lot of stable coins on it as well. And so, Aptos could see some competition from there when we're speaking purely through a stablecoin lens. But the point being, guys, is that, when I look at these charts, it's like, especially for Aptos, I'll be completely honest, guys, when I see a chart like Aptos, these are my favorite charts. Why? Because everyone who wanted to sell has already sold. Like, anyone who's been holding on through this entire time, the only people left are diamond hands, and people assume, oh, like everyone who's just been holding through this range, they're going to sell as soon as it pumps. Well, if they didn't sell back here and they didn't sell back here and they didn't sell back here, they're probably not going to sell when Aptos gets back into that range. They're probably going to keep holding. Basically the only people left holding Aptos at this stage are basically, insiders and hardcore believers. And you could say, well, that's pretty brutal because there's no new buyers coming in, and that's true. But at the same time, the dynamics here, it's not like something like Solana where a lot of people aped in around the top. It's not like something like Sui where a lot of people aped in around the top. Here, there was just like no one was really aping in. It was just, probably people who are true believers in Aptos who have been either been accumulating. Maybe they did ape in around like these local tops. But Aptos still hasn't really seen its growth yet. So again, as I've been saying it in every video about these three cryptos, and I'll say it again, Aptos has the highest potential to surprise to the upside of these crypto, or sorry, has the highest potential in percentage terms. I would say Sui has the highest potential to surprise to the upside, if that makes any sense, like to exceed expectations. That's definitely Sui. But in Aptos' case, in terms of percentage returns, I do think it has the highest of the three, simply because it's just been basically consolidating for almost 2 years. And of course, you guys will know that by now because I've been repeating it in almost every single video. But yeah, guys, it's really interesting. Again, don't sleep on the stablecoin stuff. There are other chains, of course, that are seeing stablecoin growth. But if you actually look, I think it's Ethereum, Base, and which is a layer 2 and doesn't have its own token. And then besides that, it's Solana, Sui, Aptos, and then like Toncoin, and I think also Avalanche as of recently. But like that's basically it. Like these are the top chains for stablecoins, and the stablecoin market cap continues to grow. So something to keep in mind in the coming, especially in the coming weeks as stablecoin regulations get passed. All of these three cryptos are going to benefit from that significantly, and you definitely don't want to be sleeping on that, to say the least. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.